Welcome, collectors and hobby enthusiasts. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the HO Collection Files. In this video, specifically, we're going to be going over my collection of 187 scale bulldozers and track-type tractors. First one that we have on the table for you to take a look at, this is part of the brand new Diecast Masters Cat Minis, the Micro Constructor Collection. Again, if you guys have not seen that video, I just shot the review of that a few days ago, so check out the link at the top of your screen right now. You can check out that video. This is the D5G. I have a couple of these in my collection. I modified one of them down to a D3G, which is what you see because it scales out to a D3G in HO scale. Changed the decals up a little bit, added a few decals, gave it a little bit more of that authentic look to it. The blade is positionable. It moves up and down and moves left and right. Again, if you want a more in-depth review of this, check out the mini video and you can see how it actually works. So that's the first one in the collection. Next, we have a long been discontinued model by Athern. This is the John Deere 650H LT. Another similar sized dozer. And honestly, this was pretty detailed for when it came out. Rubber tracks, but really high quality decals. The blade as well on here didn't raise, but it did move left and right. Even today, these are pretty highly sought after by many HO scale collectors. And oftentimes they can raise a pretty hefty price tag for a dozer that's really not all that functional. But in terms of having it on your layout or on a lowboy or on a flat car, it does look the part and a very convincing representation of a real 650. So if you want something a little bit older than that, how about this? This is an original NZG Cat D4. This is one of the updated versions, later releases in the run because it has the Caterpillar Pyramid logo. Essentially the same old casting from the 70s and 80s. I do have the original box and the NCG tag that came with these. The ripper is not positionable, but you can raise the blade, and the rubber tracks will move, but again, with the date of these and how old the rubber tracks are, I really like to discourage people from doing that. Last thing you want to do is bust a rubber track on a machine that's older than 30 years. So there is the D4. Next, this is a Norscot Cat D5M LGP. Came out in about 2002. This is quite a nice dozer. The tracks are movable, and the blade is very positionable. You can raise it, you can lower it, and you can tilt it as well. So, although it technically doesn't have LGP tracks, obviously the tracks would be much wider than those that are on here, it's a very nice example of the D5M. And again, this came out in about 2002, so the modeling standard wasn't exactly as high as it is today, but it's still a great model, and in many hobby shops across the country, you can actually still find this model on the shelves. Alright, so this is something I've had since childhood. This is a Tomica Komatsu D65A. Honestly, I don't exactly remember how I came to own one of these. Tomica was not a brand that was readily available to me as a youngster, but this did have a pretty considerable amount of playtime. Obviously, you can see with one of the cylinders being, as near as make no difference, broken on here. But I did try to clean it up a little bit when I got older and tried to preserve it as much as I could. I actually requisitioned a spare track for this because one of the tracks was broken on it. But still in all, it does scale out to exactly 187 scale, so you could put it in your collection. And it's not a bad dozer. I just wish that one of the cylinders wasn't bent on it. So that's the Tomica Komatsu D65A. From research I've done on this, I think the first version of this was done in like 1974. I don't know. Guessing my buddy Diecast Mania will probably set me straight on that. He's one of the forerunning guys on YouTube on Tomica products. All right, next we have the CCM Cat D7 dozer. Pretty new addition to my collection. This is a brass piece, and this does come with a towed ripper. I have filmed a review, full-length review on this. I believe it has not yet been uploaded. So when I upload the review of this, I will post a link to it, so that while you guys are watching this video, if you want, you can pause and watch the review, or when you're finished watching this video, you can go ahead and watch the full-length review on this. But the Toad Ripper is very cool. This came out in CCM in 2004, 2005. And what's really neat is, check this out. Little lever here. You can actually raise the... Can you see that? You can actually raise the blade up by pushing the lever down. How cool is that? Typical CCM brass standards. Tracks are stationary on this, as are, for the most part, all of the brass CCM tracked vehicles. But the high standard of decal and finish more than makes up for that. All right. Next up, we have a First Gear International Harvester TD15. Many different versions of the International Harvester dozers were made by First Gear. This is one of two examples that you'll see in this video. They also made track loaders, pipe layers, fire dozers. They made a municipal dozer. They even made a version for the military. Again, if you go on the internet and Google First Gear International Harvester dozers, you will see all of them. And they did, again, all of these in various scales, not only HO scale, which you'll see here, but 1/50th scale, 1/25th scale. They did a ton of these, and each of these models have very, very high quality product on it. So the tracks on here are metal. They will roll. You can move the blade up and down. This version of the TD15 has the winch on the back, which is nicely detailed, but it is not functional, which you really wouldn't expect it to be in this scale. But the model looks the part, and it's very good looking. So that's the TD15. Next up, we have the Komatsu D61PXI bulldozer. Another one of the shareholder gifts by Komatsu. Not sure what year this was. I'm going to take a stab at it and say 2015, 2016. Pretty nice model. Rubber tracks that do move, blade that does move. Up, down, a little bit of left to right tilt. But if you want a modern day Komatsu dozer that isn't really a mining dozer, and one that isn't brass, this is one of only a couple options out there. Now this does have the LGP style tracks on it, which as you can see are much wider than your typical tracks. Not a bad dozer. Okay, next couple dozers we'll take a look at are by HWP, which is Hobby Works and Publishing. This is a Case 1850K. Also falls into the category of not tremendous, but not bad. Just average. Movable rubber tracks. And you got to be really, really careful if you want to position or move the blade, because the cylinders, and particularly the plastic rams, are very, very, very fragile. So I just kind of leave it as is on this. They are getting a little bit more difficult to find, particularly the Case one. The New Holland one that you'll see in a minute is somewhat easy to find still. But that's the Case 1850K. And here is the aforementioned New Holland D180. This has a 3-shanked ripper on the back. Tons of plastic on this. Really the only part that's actually die-cast is the main body of the tractor. The ripper, the blade, all that is done in plastic. Obviously black rubber tracks. One highlight I do like on this are the hoses that are on the cylinders. Hydraulic hoses and things. They even had yellow grab rails and stuff on the back. And up on top, right above the D180 on the engine. That gives it some nice detail. Again, things you don't often see on reasonably priced 187 scale die-cast models. Not too bad. Next up, we have another model that isn't exactly HO scale, but close enough. I believe they marketed this as 183 scale. This is by Toy State. It's the Caterpillar D7E electric drive dozer. If you've seen the wheel loader collection video, which was also most recently filmed, there's a suggested link at the top of your screen to check that video out if you haven't yet, but you will know that Toy State also did a wheel loader as part of this series. So this is the dozer that they did in the same series. Honestly, really not bad at all. And again, they marketed these for like $6 or $7, and they were found in stores on the pegs. And compared to some of these that you've already seen for a much higher price point, I'm talking, of course, about the Hobby and Works in particular. You know, for a third of the price, these were more functional, had more detail, better looking in my opinion. And again, they were sold in major retailers. Kind of wish that this license would have lasted a little longer, and they would have produced more of these scale model replicas instead of the cat toys that they currently produce in the stores for the younger ones. Okay. Here's a great piece. This is the Classic Construction Models Caterpillar D8R dozer, track-type tractor, call it what you will. This was part of the original 12. Again, I will highly suggest to you, if you have not seen it already, check out the link at the top of your screen. That'll be the video covering the original 12 brass piece set done by Classic Construction Models. Again, this was one of the original 12. Just a fantastic looking dozer. Not much else to say about it. The blade does raise. The tracks are stationary. The blade does have the visibility perforations above the blade. Just an amazing looking piece. I do like, and I've always admired the decision CCM made when they did this way back when, that they put the tow hitch on the back instead of a ripper. I always think, in my opinion anyway, I always think that dozers look better with either a winch or a tow hitch on the back versus having a ripper on it. Again, that's just my opinion. Alright, back to first gear for a little while. Here's the other International Harvester dozer I have to show you. This is the TD25, so the bigger brother of the TD15. Now, this is the version that they did in the military colors, the municipal colors, the fire dozer. They did this in so many different versions, it's hard to even keep up. But this is the standard International Harvester construction, factory yellow paint scheme. And just to compare the two, here is the TD15 in size. You can see that the 25 is much, much larger. Unlike the 15, the 25 has a 3-shanked ripper on the back. Obviously a larger ROPS, and it doesn't really have the sweeps like the 15 has towards the front of it. Same high range of functionality, though, with the blade, the metal tracks that roll and are individually linked. And I believe the ripper even had some functionality. Yeah, it does. You can lower the ripper underneath the machine if you want to. Okay. Again, if I didn't mention, when we're talking about the First Gear International Harvester dozers, in 1/87 scale anyway, they have long been discontinued. They're very hard to get, so again, you're going to have to go on the secondary market to track those down. Next up, we have the original D9T by Norscot. So the first release of this by Norscot was the just standard cat black and yellow. Obviously, it was great to see a D9 in 1/87 scale. I would love to see a D10. If you're keeping up, we have a D7, we have a D8, we have a D9. You'll see a D11 in a bit. And it was supposed to be out by now, because earlier this year, Diecast Masters announced a D11 in Diecast in 1/87 scale, but that has been pushed to the first part, hopefully, of 2021. But we're still going to see it, along with the new 336. But again, we would love to see a D10 kind of to fill out that range of cat large dozers. So this was the Norscot D9T, released about 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. Again, 3-shanked ripper, rubber tracks. You'll notice that it's all yellow up on top. This stayed in the Norscot range until the switchover, the acquisition, to Diecast Masters. So here's that same dozer. They updated it to the anti-glare version. And that's the black sides of the blades, the black top of the engine housing, black top of the cab. Again, you'll often see this on cap mining equipment, graders, dozers in particular. So it's worth picking up one of each of these, not just if you are a completionist, but because they look like two different machines entirely. This version does have the operator inside the cab, which is not removable. And again, if you wanted to see both of these in the frame at the same time, there you go. Norscot 1 is here. Diecast Masters 1 is over here on the far side. Functionality, though, as near as makes no difference. Same thing on both. Ripper moves, the tracks will move carefully, and the blade does raise and lower. Okay, we'll conclude the dozer collection video with, without question, the most highly detailed and what I will say is probably the crown jewel of my dozer HO models. Here it is. This is the classic construction models D11R. So CCM, I believe, released these back in 2004, give or take a year or so. They did several versions of the D11R. They did this version, which is the standard version. They did the D11R in a carry dozer. They did it in mining white, and they did a carry dozer with the anti-glare scheme as well. I may be forgetting one version, but like I said, there's a handful of different ones. This is the only version that I have. I think, in my opinion, this is the best version. The blade on this is positionable. There's actually a pin, or sorry, not the blade, the ripper is positionable. There's actually a pin on the back right here that you can take out and adjust the height of the shank on the ripper. You can raise and lower the blade carefully, but again, these brass models, I tell people, they're mainly just made to be display pieces. You're not really intended to mess with them too much. I always discourage that. So once you kind of get it in the display position you want, just leave it like that. These are more or less just eye-catching pieces. But as you can see the huge fan in the see-through part of the engine there. These are all see-through as well. Hoses on the rams for the ripper. Just an unbelievable eye-catching piece. This was not part of the original 12. This was something that was added on afterwards. All four of the D11s were added on afterwards. And you're looking at somewhere well north of $1,500 to $1,600 US in today's going rate if you were able to find one of these. So there you go, collectors. That is the entire range of 187 or HO scale bulldozers that I currently have in the collection. Let me know what's your favorite down in the comments section below. As always, I'm Tommy with Diecast Emporium. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next review.